Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us and helping me along with this. So we thought we'd start with introducing yourself and talking about the looking for learning process, how you became aware of Martin Skelton, and why ISKL became interested in his work.
Thank you, Jeff. My name is Rami. I'm the Director of Teaching and Learning at the International School of Kuala Lumpur. We have been trying to get more specific about how we help our teachers grow, and then came across Martin Skelton, and I felt very impressed by the way he thinks. Highly inspirational, creative person. He is the person behind the International Primary Years Curriculum and International Middle Years Curriculum. And he has ideas on how learning could be observed, and he asks schools challenging questions. The school is about learning, so do you know what learning is? Did you define it? Where does it live? How do you observe it? So his method is to come as close as possible to the brain of students where learning happens and to seek evidence from there. So in a nutshell, the process that the protocol for looking for learning follows looking at three areas that we observe with learning. One is around knowledge, the other is around the skills, and the third one is around understanding. And when we are observing someone, a student in a classroom environment, we are looking at evidence along one of the three categories. And then on another level, he looks at the level of struggle. He calls it cognitive struggle. Is it positive? Is it he categorizes four categories for that. He talks about new learning, which is a good struggle. He talks about consolidating learning, like the students know it, they're making more sense of it, and that's good struggle as well. Then he talks about treading water. That's when we are sitting in a classroom observing students who, whether they knew it before, they still know it, or they didn't get it and they still don't get it. Or drowning. Drowning is when they are really, it's whether too easy or way above their head to the level that it has a negative emotional impact on them and their learning. So ISKL was interested. Our teachers, through a survey that we conducted, said they would like to observe each other. They would like to get more feedback about their own teaching from colleagues. So we thought that's a nice process for us to help us structure it.
So when you talk about struggle, I guess it's the too much struggle is maybe a little bit negative, appropriate struggle, and then no struggle. Okay. Okay, good. So the map that Martin uses, how has that helped teachers grow?
You know, I've done with Martin around 34 observations over the last 2 years. You know, went with him in classroom, and I have to say, my thinking changed over time. What I thought I got at the beginning took me longer to understand. It actually profoundly shifts the focus from what teachers do to what's happening in the mind of a student. So when we go into a classroom, we are observing a student or a group of students over a period of time, might be 15 minutes. What did they get better at during these 15 minutes? We don't necessarily care about what happened before. We don't know what will happen later. But during my observation, what new learning, what happened in their minds, whether it's knowledge, skills, or understanding. So it really profoundly shifts the focus of teachers from activities, what am I going to do, to is the learning happening? So instead of saying what strategies can I use for this activity or for this learning, I will ask myself, after doing the looking for learning protocol, how this is best learned. This, the topic, for those students, how is it best learned? So my initial starting point is the student rather than the activity.
Okay, thank you. And let's extend that a little further then. How has this map helped students grow?
Actually, the fact that the feedback is immediate, is instant. When we go in, when, for example, you ask me to observe you and I talk at the beginning, what do you like me to focus on? I go in, I record the data on the map as I see it, and then I give you immediate feedback after the lesson. Your ability as a teacher to take action is instant, is the very next day, the very next class, to address their needs. So in terms of immediacy, in terms of being responsive to their needs, I don't know of any method that is as quick or as efficient to address the students' needs.
Okay. I'm sensing that the focus of this supervision then is shifting. It's not necessarily supervision of the teacher, it's supervision of the learning. And in this aspect, to what extent has this tool, the Looking for Learning tool and the map, helped helped you have these conversations with teachers about what's happening in the classroom?
So the map, after actually completing, after I go and observe a teacher, I record on the map the data, the names of students based on how I observed, what I observed, and then meet with the teacher, and then we co-create the map together. It's not intended, Martin would say, it's not about here is your map, good luck. But it's about, okay, how was it for you from your perspective as a teacher? Let's look. You asked me to focus, for example, on the EAL students in this particular setting. I did. What is your feedback as a teacher? So we co-create that map. And only when we're both happy with where the kids are placed, we can start having the discussions, the questions that Martin developed. He has 7 questions. The first 4 are about the learning of students.
Let me just clarify. So you together as a teacher and an observer locate students on the map as far as this student was struggling in this area, therefore I've placed this student as drowning. Or the data that this student showed me in the class as we spoke suggested that this student was treading water. You do that collectively with the teacher?
With the teacher.
Okay.
And based on the observation that I made in classroom, I go as close as possible to students, and as we know, I need to interact with them to know what did they learn now that they did not know before. So I'm recording growth that happens during my observation time. And it's not their level of performance, but what did they get better at during my time.
Okay, and then I cut you off, and then you suggested you use the map as a jumping off point to ask and prompt questions from the teacher.
Exactly, and these questions are very valuable. And it's interesting, Martin is an amazing guy and very creative, but his first 4 questions are very yes-no, dichotomous questions. He asks, was there any learning happening during this observation? Is it a good news or bad news? You see the distribution along the map. The first 2 left columns, some learning is happening, good learning is happening. So we talk about that. If there isn't much learning happening, then whether the unit design or the teacher ability to assess student feedback is not necessarily where it should be, because obviously if there isn't much learning happening during that observation, that there's something wrong. But if learning is happening, then the question goes, was it appropriate? That's the second question. Was it sufficient? The third question. Was it creating the love and passion for learning? Or they got good results, but they hated the subject. After these discussions, which is similar in a coaching scenario where you ask reflective questions and you help the teacher clarify her or his thinking for herself. You go to what did the teacher do well to promote learning? What could the teacher do better to enhance it? And the last question is, what can the school do? In some cases, it's really not the teacher's fault. Whether it's the scheduling issue, the timing, the learning environment, the program, the assessment. But the intention is to focus first on students. Once we are clear about that, then to move to what the teacher did to improve or enhance the learning.
Okay. And in this process, to what extent has this tool assisted you in your work and the ISKL teachers in their work to investigate the results of their teaching through the lens of student learning?
You know, I would rate it, like rank it as the highest. It has the highest impact. The reason but it cannot be used alone. That's my understanding. It's a tool out of more other components in the process are required in addition to looking for learning. But it really helps teachers know what they talk about. When we talk about learning, do we really mean the same thing? When we are observing it, are we really observing the same thing? How is our judgment made? The teachers at ISKL who used it speak very highly of its impact on the way they see their own teaching. It changed radically. Because Martin would say, are the kids busy or busy learning? And that's a simple but profound question. It's so easy for us to keep them busy, thinking they're learning. They're happy, they're engaged, all the signs are good. But unless we do looking for learning, we really don't know what learning is, how does it look like? So for that perspective, I find it a very essential tool to do and to be part of a bigger picture of a school professional growth plan.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity.